Welcome back to Everyday Economics, the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, president of the 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics is a production of America's Talking Network. You can check out all of our great podcasts at americastalking.com. To support Everyday Economics, please make your tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We are recording this episode on Monday, July 24th. Joining me, as always, Dr. Orphe Divounguy, PhD economist. Dr. O, we're going to get into this and we're going to get out of this as quickly as we can. This is a fun conversation, but I want it to be a conversation starter. And I'd like to just hear from you on I think, maybe your most general but salient thoughts. Question is, and this is something that we hear from friends of ours all the time, I think, people in our family, about what we do and don't make here in the United States. And one of the things that we don't make here is, the full from beginning to end technology that winds its way into consumers' hands, right? We can't make cell phones here for some reason. So why is it that we can't?
I'm not necessarily a supply chains expert, but I can tell you one thing. It's very difficult to get Americans to do those assembly jobs that you see factories in Asia putting together. And basically what they're able to do is produce millions of units in a short period of time, where that just doesn't exist in America. And we've seen many efforts, like the Foxconn, President Trump, Foxconn mumbo jumbo, if you want to call it that.
Well, you just did. You're talking about the plant in Wisconsin that promised to bring in, I don't remember what it was. I think it was more than 10,000.
13,000 jobs.
I brought in,
like that.
Like 600 or something like that. But yeah. And these things happen, right? I mean, these kinds of things happen. And Foxconn obviously is a foreign player, but yeah.
The biggest problem for me is that where do the funds come from? I mean, look, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to say we're going to bring this type of manufacturing back to the United States if it ultimately means that Americans will pay more and essentially not even get the jobs they were promised in the first place. But anyway, that's just my opinion. I think, honestly, I really think that there are places around the world that have a huge advantage for doing certain things, and that capital should flow to those places to get those things done, because it works better for the global economy and America's benefit. So those are my thoughts. And the cell phone thing is exactly that. It just hasn't worked in the U.S. I think there might be one company in the U.S. that manufactures cell phones. The whole process done in the U.S. and they're so small I can't remember.
They're not a relevant market player. The reality of it is I think that the sort of high end tech is gonna be problematic from a build standpoint here in the United States. The design work, and certainly, the marketing, which is two pretty important factors. I mean, you just think about a company like Apple. What are Apple's real core capacity? I mean, they make products that are smart and innovative and perceived to be of high value, and they cost a fair amount. But boy, they make you feel like you need them, and they're very, very good at that. I think, though, just to kind of pivot this, because I did open up and say, why don't we make cell phones here? There are things that we could make here. And I think during COVID, when supply chains started to lag, we did see that there were opportunities to make things here that we hadn't made here, and that we could make them pretty good. And we were able to turn those supply chains on relatively quickly when you consider that they started from from nowhere. I mean, when we started to make ventilators, we were able to make ventilators quickly. Now, I guess the question is, well, if we don't need ventilators anymore, how about toaster ovens or some other consumer electronics or like, lower grade consumer appliances, all of which used to be made, in the United States and very few are today. Can that happen? I mean, don't we have some advantages with regard to our access to energy here in the United States to be a player like that with the residuals, in the plastics and polymer space? Wouldn't we have an opportunity to be better at this than we are?
Well, first of all, you need the entire ecosystem, right? You need all of the parts, all of the components. You need everything here. I think that's the first challenge. And then once you've done that, U.S. workers are just more expensive. They just are. And so if we want the price of our cell phones to increase, sure, why not? If we're willing to, if it brings enough jobs and enough wage growth that justifies the higher price for all these things, maybe, I don't know, but I just don't see it happening. I don't see first the being able to bring together the entire ecosystem needed to be successful.
Well, I'll tell you what. I don't think it's necessarily a priority, and it could and it should be. You think about like sort of like some of the regions in the United States. Like I think of like Western Pennsylvania, Southeastern Ohio, Northern West Virginia. Where you do have the ability to produce petroleum based products. But we're not doing it, right? And that could be, frankly, a place where we could start. I mean, the high-end tech is the high-end tech, and I mean, I think it would be really hard to pull that back because as a country, we've made a tremendous amount of investment in not doing it here on the manufacturing.
Interestingly enough, I heard Tim Cook say it never started in the U.S. It was never here in the U.S. to start with, right? Like this whole cell phone thing. The smartphone side, it never started in the U.S. It never began in the U.S. It would be a first.
But Motorola was an early player here. I mean, you can't say that we haven't had cell phone manufacturing happen here. At one point in time, Motorola had a huge share of the U.S. cell market. But when we jumped over from these being phones, like literally, like I'm going to call you on the phone, to being something other than that, then this industry shifted. We got to call it good here, and I appreciate your thoughts as always. For Orphe Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics and dozens of other quality podcasts at americastalking.com.